Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and today we're going to be ranking every single one of these worlds down here based on how much rent costs in them. So this is just a fun idea. I've got 6 tiers here with, all the worlds that I did in the last tier list. I'll skip over things like Old Wizard City, that type of deal. But I'll do all the ones that are relevant. So our tiers here are at the cheapest, we have probably unsafe and / or falling apart. There's an apartment complex about like a 2 to 3 minute walk from my house, actually, where like the roof caved in on one of the buildings, and it's been that way since at least July when I moved in, and they've never even attempted to fix it. So that's kind of what we're dealing with this tier. The next tier up is Exploding Meth Labs. This is like cheap rent, but it's also sort of like not the safest, I guess. It's like sus activity happens here. There's reasons why people don't want to live here, and thus the rent is lower. Next, we have probably the only normal tier with affordable, which means that it's a little more pricey than these two, but you can at least you can at least live well in worlds that end up in the affordable tier. And then the next one up is no vacations, basically just meaning like you're barely making ends meet, living paycheck to paycheck, putting the fries in the bag. You'll be able to maybe live in some of these worlds, but definitely not comfortably. Next up, we have the HOA involved tier, which means like more upscale neighborhoods. Rent probably costs a lot, and then on top of that, you're paying for the HOA. Personally, if I had to choose between living in a neighborhood with exploding meth labs or with an HOA, I'd say exploding meth labs, just because the rent is lower. But HOA involved, that's going to be our tier up here. And then at the most expensive, we have the Austin, Texas tier. Real ones will get it. You can substitute this for, I don't know, Chicago or New York or wherever you want to put. But for me, Austin, Texas tier. So let's get started. So we're going to skip over Old Wizard City like I said, but for regular Wizard City, I don't know. I feel like it would cost a lot, wouldn't it? I'm gonna go with HOA involved on Wizard City, just because like it's definitely a more upscale type place, but it's like there's only so many streets, and I mean, I guess there's a lot on like Triton Avenue and the 3 streets outside of Old Town. So I guess there's like some type stuff going on. I don't know, but it's like the Haunted Cave sort of like closes off a whole thing, and then there's Dark Cave. I don't know. It's like the 3 streets that are safe to live on. Or I guess technically there's 4 with Unicorn Way, so I don't know. I'll put it in the no vacations tier. I think if you're working like a regular entry-level job, you're probably not gonna have too much money to your name, but you can at least live somewhat comfortably if you're just like spending frugally, that sort of deal, and just like keeping your spending in check, not door dashing every night. Sorry, Greg. That one's totally not targeted at you. But next up, we have Krokotopia, and I think this one I'm going to put in the Exploding Meth Labs tier, just because, I mean, Krokotopia, it's sort of like, I don't think I would call it falling apart, because you can, like, it's not like the worst type thing going on, but there's definitely a reason why like a normal person would not want to live in Krokotopia. It's like there's all this like weird stuff going on. There's that whole like bubbly green liquid going on in the Well of Spirits. It's like there's stuff going on where it's like you probably wouldn't want to live here. I mean, not even the Marleybonians like really live there. They're just sort of like, they don't even want to colonize it. They're just excavating for their museum. It's like that's sort of why it's not any higher. It's like that the Marleybonian Colonizer Index. That's what we'll call it. So the Marleybonian Colonizer Index, or MBI, not very high in Krokotopia. They're just here to pillage. They're not here to take over. So Exploding Meth Labs tier, that's where we're going to put Krokotopia. Selenopolis, on the other hand, I think I will put probably in the affordable tier. Khonsu sort of like he wanted to sort of create his own little paradise, and I think he sort of did that. And although, you know, there's definitely... It's like Crocotopia if it was more stable. That's how I see it, at least. So I think Selenopolis, also with like the Blended Grove, that's a great tourist destination. You know, Selenopolis, I think I'd put it in the affordable tier. I think you could reasonably live here, and rent would not be too high. So, you know, if you were trying to rent in Selenopolis, it wouldn't be too bad. It wouldn't break the bank. So that, I think, gets a good amount of respect, so I'll put it in the affordable tier. Next up is Marleybone, and this one, well, when we get to Pirate Marleybone, I think it'll be a little different, but I think for Wiz Marleybone, I'm going to go with the No Vacations tier. I think it's a little pricey, and you probably wouldn't be able to skate by too easy, but it's also, like, not the safest, but also not really worthy of falling down here. It's like, you've gotta be pretty well off to, you know, afford rent in Marleybone, but I think No Vacations is where it's gonna go the highest, just because it's like, there are elements of the Exploding Meth Labs tier that sort of play into Marleybone. It's like, you know, you've got bandits on the roofs and like hooligans and all that, so that, I think, we're gonna see Marleybone here. You could make a case for it to go higher, but we'll talk about that. Mushu is up next, and I honestly think Mushu would be quite affordable. It feels like, to me, that you could probably live in Mushu and be more or less fine. In Wiz Mushu, that is. And, because, you know, in Wiz Mushu, it's like the Emperor was asleep, but, you know, there was just, the problems, it's like after the wizard comes through and solves the problems, like purifying the water, that's kind of a big one, so I think that would make Mushu more affordable. In my opinion, I think it would be worthy of making it into the affordable tier. Next up, Dragonspire, without a shadow of a doubt, probably unsafe and / or falling apart. I don't really think I need to elaborate on that, probably for good reason. So next up, Celestia. I think I'm also going to say the same, just because it's like, it's sort of meant to be like an in ruins type of world, so Celestia. Also going to go down here in the probably unsafe and / or falling apart tier. We did sort of, the MBI is seemingly lower here than it was in Crocotopia, so MBI being low, and plus the fact that it is falling apart, I think we're going to put Celestia down here in the bottom tier. Zafaria? Zafaria... I'll go with affordable. Yeah, I'll go with affordable, because it's like, it doesn't feel like rent would cost too much in Zafaria, but it's definitely, it wouldn't be too pricey, because there's a lot of like rural spots in Zafaria, like there's, you know, settlements like Stone Town and you know, Waterfront. It's like those are sort of major cities. The Baobab Crown, I guess, counts as well. And those, I guess, would probably go up a bit higher, but on average, I would say Zafaria, probably an affordable place to live. I don't think there's too much happening with it. I mean, there's, like, you know, crime going on, but where is it not? I mean, you have all these other worlds, but it's like, as long as you can steer clear of the Inzabu bandits, I'm sure you'll be fine. It's like they've got the Baobab Market. I mean, Zafaria seems to me like you could live here pretty comfortably. And I don't think rent would be too high. Avalon, where would I put Avalon? I don't know. I think Avalon to me feels like it would also go in the affordable tier. Like, maybe that's just me. Yeah, I'm a little iffy on this placement, but I do think Avalon does go in the affordable tier. It feels like, you know, people are living pretty comfortably in Avalon. It's like there's not, you can't really tell that there's some sort of like housing crisis going on. It feels like everybody's reasonably got a place to live, and so rent would be cheaper in Avalon, so that's how I feel about that. Azteca, After the comet hits, probably, like, definitely down here. But before, I would say probably Exploding Meth Labs. I mean, there was a guy in 3 points, like, really early on in the storyline, where, like, it was some crazy old Aztecosaur who, like, made some salve or whatever to clear debris in front of the cenote, like the entrance to it, and it exploded, and I think that alone is going to get it into the Exploding Meth Labs tier. It's like there's kind of some crazy stuff going on in Azteca, I will say that. So Azteca will end up in the Exploding Meth Labs tier. Chrysalis, I don't know. I feel like there's some parts of Chrysalis that I feel like... Well, let's talk about part 1 and 2. So, Chrysalis part 1... I don't know. Part 1 I feel like would be more affordable. Because it's like the burrowers, after like they take control back, it's like, you know, you got Peppergrass Nook and in the Last Wood and all that. Like there's definitely settlements. But it doesn't seem like it would be too bad to live in. So maybe that's just me, but I think Chrysalis part 1 would be pretty affordable. Now, part 2, on the other hand, I think there's some HOA involved type beat going on. I mean, if you look at Sardonyx, it's like their government is very... It's... Good luck. It's very, like, sort of closed off in Sardonyx, and as a result of that, I'm pretty sure there'd be a housing crisis going on. I don't think it would be insane. Like, Sardonyx probably gets into the Austin, Texas tier, but for some of this other stuff... Like Honda Desert, you could easily live out there if you could, you know, find housing, but that type of deal. And it's just sort of like in part 2. Well, I don't know. It's like the one place where you could live. I guess there's technically 2. There's the Hive and Sardonyx. And Crescent Beach, I guess, is technically part 2. I don't know. I'll leave it in this tier. HOA involved. Like, the Sardonyx Mantis HOA probably exists. Let's be real. I mean, let's be real. Next up is Polaris. This, I think, goes in the Austin, Texas tier. Like bro, Polaris, it's like... The rent in Polaris, I'm sure, is probably through the roof. I mean, you think about the government that the walrus and... like the polar bears had going on. It's like, I feel like rent was mad expensive in that. But it's like, you know, you've got the harbor. It's like there's only one spot, I guess, in the main sort of area. It's like there's Irville Station, I guess, but that's like a mining town. I personally, I would say, like, I think Polaris does belong in the Austin, Texas tier. Like, it would probably cost a lot to live there. It's like, there's some great sights, like the Aurora Borealis going on and all that, but it would probably cost an arm and a leg to live in Polaris. I'm just going to say it. Next up is Mirage, and... I mean, with some of the house cats, it's kind of... Because, I mean, there's, like, the houses, they have their own, like manners and whatnot for the families. But if we're talking about things like Istanbul and Agrabah and, you know, Yakal Mountain even, I think those would get it up pretty high. So it's like the rural spots, like, you could probably afford to live in Caravan. I don't think Birdie would charge you too much, but I do think that it's like it's Caravan versus like the Agrabah, Yakal Mountain, and Istanbul, and I think that is gonna get Mirage probably into the HOA involved here. It's like, if you choose to live in Caravan, you're good, but it's like it's probably pretty expensive to live in Mirage. I'm gonna say that. Imperia is up next, and this Imperia I feel like is gonna be a little hard to place because You have Ariel, which is, you know, Ariel Shore, Nowhere Village. I'm sure it wouldn't cost too much to live there. And then the jungle, obviously. But then it's sort of like... It's like Xanadu, I feel like would cost a lot. Yeah. Like, even with Khan back on the throne. Maybe... But then it's like Athenor. Athenor, I think, skews it a little. I think I could reasonably put part 1 in no vacations. I think that it would get a little bit pricey, but I guess you could still technically live in like Xanadu and Athenor and that sort of thing. So that, I think, is where I'll put Imperia Part 1, just in the no vacations tier. For Part 2, on the other hand, where should I put that? Part 2 is like Samsara and, you know, Nimbus. Nimbus, I feel like, might be a little more expensive, but just overall, I think Part 2 should probably end up in the affordable tier, because it's like Velo City and Port Arrow, it's like, I feel like those would be affordable places to live. Like, they're not sort of hindered by like a small living space in the Arrow plans. It's like maybe maybe Nimbus would be up a couple tiers, but everything else I feel like would be pretty affordable for Imperia Part 2, and it wouldn't be particularly unsafe either. I mean, you got like whirly burly matches to go watch if you live there. It's like what can I say, right? Yeah, next up, Karamelle, definitely going in the Austin, Texas tier. I mean, geez, the rent in Karamelle probably goes insane, let's be honest. It's like Karamelle City probably costs a brick. It's like there were people willingly living in the Nibelheim mines just because, like, it probably cost less. And, you know, there was like less government overreach going on down there. So rent, I feel like, would be pretty insane in Karamelle. I personally would not like that. And Lemuria is next, though. And Lemuria, I don't know. Lemuria is a little tougher to place, because it's like there's some spots like Ursai probably wouldn't be too bad. Heap, I feel like, is a little unsafe, but Lemuria, I kind of don't know where to put it, because it's like Lemuria is another one of those where it's sort of all over. But Sky City, I feel like, is definitely HOA involved type territory, though, so I will say that. I'll say, like, on average, it'll go in the no vacations tier, just because it's like Sky City is definitely way up here, but it's like there's other places like I'm sure Telos and Ursai probably don't cost a lot. They're probably pretty affordable, and then like Heap is probably not safe and might cost a little bit, but I don't think it would be as crazy as Sky City. So I think Sky City is just sort of like that much of an outlier that it would, like, Sky City alone probably end up at the top of the Austin, Texas tier, but otherwise I think Lemuria just on average will probably land in the no vacations tier. So next up is Novus, and this one is kind of an interesting one. Maybe you'll disagree with where I put it, but I think I'm going to say Novus would be very affordable. I think that just the whole Dasein element, it's like if you can contact Dasein, that sort of deal, then it's very affordable to live in Novus. And it's like, sure, Conatus is a little odd, but I mean, for everything else, it's like the other spots in Novus, like, those are the paradises that Dasein saw for all of the nations that colonized it. Like the MBI with New Vicoria, very, very high. But yeah, it's like even that I feel like wouldn't be too bad. I think we could reasonably call Novus affordable, just because it's like if you didn't have a place to live, just ask Dasein, he'd give you one. It's that sort of thing. And I'm sure like the leadership would take issue with that, but Dasein, I feel like Dasein's a good person. He'd be like, nah, you know, people should be able to live here without being charged an arm and a leg. I think that's how he would interpret it. So Novus, I think we will put in the affordable tier. Next up is Wallaru, and this one is a little interesting. I talked about this on stream, and that was actually where I got this idea for the video to begin with, where we started talking about like where rent would be insane. But something to think about with Wallaru is that there's only one sort of city, I guess, and that's Hope Springs. And then there's also Billabong Resort, but it's like those two, I feel like, would end up in at least the HOA involved here. Like, Billabong Resort, easily Austin, Texas, but Hope Springs, probably a tier down. But the existence of the Collie Ranch does at least give me the notion that, you know, it's like if you can make something of yourself, if you can live on your own, then you're able. So I think with that in mind, it's like the expensive spots are really expensive, but you could get by on your own. And I think that's grounds for putting it in the no vacations tier. So that's where I'm feeling it for Wallaru. And that's like the whole Dreamwater deal, just sort of attracting people to Hope Springs, I guess, would kind of jack up the rent there. But overall, I think Wallaru, probably just a no vacations type deal. If you aren't living in like one of the main, maybe if you lived in Hope Springs, maybe if you lived like out by Kingsland, that sort of thing. But yeah, Wallaru, no vacations. Next up is Wisteria. This I think I'm going to put in the Austin, Texas tier. Like, it probably costs mad to live in Wisteria. I mean, I'm just like thinking about it. It probably does cost a lot to live in Wisteria, so yeah, probably going to end up safely in the Austin, Texas tier. Grizzleheim. I feel like Grizzleheim... I'm going to call Grizzleheim affordable. I'm going to call Grizzleheim affordable, but Wintertusk is going to go in Exploding Meth Labs, because you see some interesting characters in Wintertusk. So it's like Wintertusk, probably worthy of Exploding Meth Labs, but the rest of Grizzleheim, reasonably affordable. It's like a very make something of yourself type world. But Wintertusk definitely a little off the deep end. So Wintertusk probably cheaper, but also a harsher climate. And, you know, of course you've got like ravens casting spells all over the place. You can never be sure what's going to happen in that house down the street in Wintertusk. Like that's sort of where I'm coming from with that. So next up, we have Aquila, and this is Wiz Aquila. I think for Wiz Aquila, I'm going to skip this, because there is a Pirate Aquila down here that we'll talk about. Kembalung, this is like... I don't know. I feel like... would it cost a lot to live in Kembalung Village? It's a village, so maybe not. But it's also sort of like an exotic tourist destination, so maybe no vacations. So that's where I think it'll go. As for Barkingham, if you are like, does this even count? It's like I don't think there are houses in Barkingham. I think it's just like the well, I guess there's the rooftops dungeon, but even still, I think we'll skip Barkingham. It's just sort of like an extension of Marleybone. House of Scales. If we were living in like Zigazag, I feel like it would be... Well, no. Zigazag, I feel like, would get it into Exploding Meth Labs. Like, if you have, like, the place where the souls of the damned are sort of strung up and judged down the street, maybe that would constitute Exploding Meth Labs territory. That could just be me. But I think Zigazag, just as a whole, ends up here. Darkmoor... I think just with what we saw, this is also going to go in Exploding Meth Labs, just because it's like crazy stuff is going down in Darkmoor. It's like Shane Von Shane, it's like that whole plot line was pretty mental. But yeah, Darkmoor, Exploding Meth Labs. Catacombs, though. Well, the situation in which we found the catacombs was very Exploding Meth Labs, but I think living in the catacombs themselves... Should I even place this one? I don't think it's... It's like the drains, dude. Nah, I don't think I'll do this one. Yeah, I don't think I'll put this one on the list. Skull Island. This, I feel like, is some HOA involved type stuff. I don't think it's insane, but, you know, Captain Avery, he runs a tight ship. I think we're going to go ahead and say HOA involved for Skull Island Pirate. Monquista. This is like the Holy Inquisition Spain era. I think that alone is going to get into the Austin, Texas tier. It's like it's like if you could tell the government is a little more authoritarian and sort of like out there. it's like this is before Cortez, by the way, but I think I think I would put this in the Austin, Texas tier. That's, yeah, Austin, Texas tier for that. For Valencia Part 1, this is Aragon Skyway, and I think I think I would put it in affordable. It's there's not much there, but I mean there's a side quest in Part 2 that says it's more remote. But I do think that Valencia Part 1 is worthy of the affordable tier. I think you could reasonably live there and be fine. It's just like, yeah, it's like there's 2 settlements. It's like Sabella and Grantia. Damn, bro, I need to sleep more. But it's like Sabella and Grantia are like the 2 main spots, and I feel like they wouldn't be too bad. So I think affordable is where I'll put Valencia Part 1. Cool Ranch. This one I think I'll also put in affordable. This is very... It's sort of like... I don't know how to describe it. It's very like... Make something of yourself. Like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, kind of. It's like... That's sort of where I'm coming from with this placement. I do think Cool Ranch would be affordable. It's just maybe don't live in Haunted Skyway. That's that's kind of about it. But yeah, Cool Ranch I think does deserve to be here. Pirate Mushu. This one's interesting. I think I would say... Hamamitsu I feel like would be less affordable. But it's like some of the other spots... I don't know. I'll put this in the no vacations tier. I feel like rent in the Pirate Mushu locations would be a little more expensive than Wiz Mushu, but yeah, I don't think it would like break the bank. So that's where I'll put this. Next up, Pirate Marleybone, and I know I put Wiz Marleybone in no vacations, but this one is going to go in the HOA involved tier. I briefly touched on that, but it's like you're living in a more urban spot. And when that happens, that's when you sort of inch closer to the Austin, Texas tier. So that's kind of what's going on. And just sort of out there on like the Isle of Dogs, Isle of Fetch, those spots, I think make Pirate Marleybone worthy of HOA involved. So there's that. Pirate Aquila, on the other hand, I think with this, I think with Pirate Aquila, we'll say HOA involved. I feel like it would be more expensive. Like, yeah, because if you're living in Nova Aquila, it's probably expensive. If you're living in, I don't know, Ilios, that's like the Serpent City, might be a little cheaper, but it's like Nova Aquila and Ithaca especially are probably like really expensive. So that's where I'm coming from with that. And then you have like Akia, I feel like that would be a little more expensive. And then of course like the other islands, you probably just don't want to live on those. So that's sort of where I'm getting at with that. So HOA involved here for Aquila and Pirate. For Valencia Part 2, this is Florenza, without a doubt, in the Austin, Texas tier. That is like the most upscale part of Valencia, and it's like that's like the royal city type deal. It's like that's the capital. So that I think will get you into the Austin, Texas tier. So with that being said, yeah, that's going to be all the things that I will rank for this list. There's a bunch of spiral destinations that appear to be much more affordable, so how about that? But then there's also a bunch that are probably pricier. And of course, there are some that are just not safe at all, so that's where you have that. So, yeah, just a funny little video that I wanted to do. But that is going to wrap up this tier list, I guess. So, with that in mind, thank y'all for watching. I have been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more. And I will see y'all later.